Hello and welcome. Today is 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, March 20th. My name is Andy Zelt with Axiom Human Resource Solutions. I wanted to get in front of you, and just to preface this, I have a few guests with us, but we're practicing the 6-foot social distance rule, so it's going to seem awkward and not natural. This isn't meant to be perfect. We're trying to deliver to you as quickly as possible and digest all of this news that's changing on a regular basis. So I have 2 guests that I'll bring in here shortly, and then you'll hear my voice in the background. So I just don't want you to be freaked out. Wow, what a last crazy 7 to 10 days. Things are changing very quickly. I'm sure many of us would prefer to be watching March Madness than looking at my beautiful face right now, but this is kind of the world that we're living in right now. The bill, the Coronavirus Family Act bill, is 42 pages long. That was signed into law a few days ago. If many of you owners are like me, reading 4 pages is going to be more than enough for our distraction level, 42 pages. So in these times of need, I've always joked with my brother that I wanted a sister. Well, today I do. I have our sister company, Apex Benefits, with us. You have to bring in reinforcements and the experts in these times, and that's what I'm doing here today. So joining me today is General Counsel of Apex Benefits, Todd Rokita, and Associate Counsel Brooke Salazar with Apex Benefits as well. They're going to go through this bill, what we know right now, and digest it, and then we'll be delivering more content in the coming days. So please welcome both of them to the stage.
Hello, everyone. I'm Todd Rokita. I'm General Counsel and Vice President of External Affairs at Apex Benefits Group, right here in Indiana. Before my time at Apex, I was a U.S. Congressman for the 4th District of Indiana and Indiana Secretary of State. So I'm going to be leading us through the behind-the-scenes sausage making of the Families First Coronavirus Protection Act, and also some of the public policy behind it. Brooke?
I'm Brooke Salazar. I'm the Associate General Counsel here at Apex Benefits. And prior to my law degree, I worked for over a decade in HR. So I like to look at the law, but then actually understand how it applies to HR people on an everyday basis.
So our agenda today is going to be an overview of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, what it does, what it doesn't do, and what is yet to come in terms of more laws and regulations from the federal government. Also, we're going to talk about pertinent takeaways for your business that you can use, hopefully, yet today.
And Todd, I just want to ask you, does this count as legal advice?
Oh, heck no. We hope it will be more informative. We hope it will be educational, but definitely do consult your legal counsel as well. So with that, first thing we want to talk about is basically the overview of the Families First Response Act. First of all, free coronavirus testing. Your healthcare plan and basically any other healthcare provider is now mandated to offer this testing for free. The first point to make sure you understand, though, is that testing is different than treatment. So while the testing is free under the law, treatment and all that would still be covered through the dictates of your employer healthcare plan or whatever other costs, ancillary costs there may be. Secondly, we're going to talk about paid emergency sick leave and paid emergency FMLA leave, and Brooke and I will go into that in more detail. And the final point that we need to realize about what is phase 2. It was phase 1, this is phase 2, and phase 3 is yet to come in terms of the federal law. But with regard to this act and its phase 2, they're really going to enhance the unemployment insurance programs and the systems in the states. So there's been a lot of money set aside for that. Before we go further, let's talk about the public policy of the Family First Coronavirus Response Act. It is to protect U.S. residents, U.S. citizens, everyone who may come in contact here on our shores, and that includes your employees. So this is not necessarily an insurance act. This is not necessarily an act that's going to take care and change sick leave policy or family medical leave policy for the future. It has a specific ending time that we'll get into, and it's going to have some costs that we expect and hope employers to be reimbursed for, and rather quickly. But it's to keep people safe by keeping them separate. Don't let them come into work. It's the public policy is not to let them come into work if they're exhibiting symptoms. That's the main thing. Phase one, the law that was passed, I think about March 5th, had about $8.3 billion, and that was mostly for testing, for HHS to develop testing and do a multitude of other things. Phase two, which we're talking about today, we'll get into more detail. Phase three to come is basically, it's being worked on in the Senate right now. It's the cash infusion directly to your employees, to the people of this country, cash in their pockets, as well as very easy loan terms, and hopefully other assistance to employers as well. Brooke?
So let's talk about emergency paid leave. First of all, which employers are covered? So those are employers up to 500 employees and all public agencies of any size. So the next question, of course, that I know you have is there a 10-year requirement, or can anyone claim this benefit even if they've only been on the job one day? And the answer is yes. So all of your current employees, regardless of days of service, are eligible for this leave. Now, what exactly does the leave cover? It covers 80 hours of full-time employees. And so it also covers part-time employees that are equal to the number of hours that they've worked over a 2-week period. So what are the reasons for paid sick leave? So first, if the employee is subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine isolation order related to COVID-19.
So, Brooke, in this situation, we're thinking that the federal government or some states' governments may order a lockdown, quote unquote, of some kind, where businesses, unless certain businesses can't be conducted, we're all supposed to stay in our houses. Would that fit the definition of quarantine here, such that paid sick leave or FMLA should be covered by employers?
Well, it depends on if the employee is able to telework. So that's an important distinction here. So if your employee is able to telework, do they really need paid sick leave? So that's something that we'll look for in the coming days from the DOL. But I think the key here is that telework option. Are they able to work remotely? The second one would be the employee has been advised to self-quarantine on the advice of a healthcare provider. So in that case, if your employee has come to you and said, I have COVID-19, you obviously would like them to stay home for this 10-day period. And the third is the employee caring for an individual that has been ordered or advised to quarantine or isolate. So whether that's a parent, a child, whomever that employee is isolating with, you obviously want to keep them out of your workplace.
Okay. Now, how about an employee that is experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 and is seeking a medical diagnosis? That's covered too. So they can come to you and say, I think I'm exhibiting symptoms. I want to go get a diagnosis. And their leave from that point on would be covered.
That's right. That's right.
What kind of any proof do I need? If I feel like I'm sick, do I have to provide you a doctor's note? Is a text message okay? An email, or any rules on that?
I think according to this, and we'll see DOL guidance later, but according to this, if they have the symptoms and they're seeking medical diagnosis, then they are eligible for this type of leave.
Yeah, the law, the spirit of the law, and I believe it talks pretty particular in the language itself about not being burdensome on the notices that are required. And so, the whole public policy here is to get persons out of the workforce, out of your office, who may be exhibiting or think they're exhibiting the symptoms. So, yeah, in normal times, maybe we thought we would think as employers that there might be some games being played or or this and that, or what kind of proof should be shown. All that is sort of out the window here when it comes to this emergency paid leave. And again, the federal government, our tax dollars, our children's tax dollars, are going to help subsidize the costs around this. But let's not, the goal is public safety, public health safety first.
So the simple terms is, if someone thinks they're sick or you think they're sick, they need to be sent home and not be around other people. And this is giving the employers a way to supplement those.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's pretty accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Next, another reason for the leave can be employee who is caring for a son or daughter whose school or place of care is closed, or a child care provider who can't do his or her job for that employee's son or daughter. In those situations, paid sick leave, emergency paid sick leave is called for, and they get leave for that. And then later, as we'll talk about, they'll get additional family medical leave for it as well. And then finally, any employees experience some symptoms that later the Health and Human Services Secretary might deem, like, so if they come out with an order or guidance on something, symptoms that they seem similar to COVID-19, that would then be covered too. Okay. The financial benefit of emergency paid sick leave. Employees should receive their regular rate of pay for leave related to their own care, diagnosis, quarantine, or isolation. Then, if their leave is related to care for a family member or for a child whose school or child care is closed down, they are entitled to 2/3 of their regular rate of pay. And Brooke, you did some research into the definition of rate of pay, and tell us a little bit more about that.
I did. The law specifically cites the FLSA, specifically 7E. And 7E includes those employer contributions that are typically being made due to a prior agreement. So whether it's retirement, life insurance, voluntary life insurance, if those are being made on behalf of the employer, then those need to continue to be made.
Okay, and then talk to us about the caps and the limits on the per day and the weekly amounts.
So if the employee is sick for their own illness, it's limited to $511 per day or $5,110 in the aggregate. Again, that's for their own illness. Now, if they're caring for another person who's received the diagnosis or the isolation, it's $200 per day cap and $2,000 in the aggregate.
Okay, so to be clear, that's a lot of numbers we're throwing around. If I get sick, I have coronavirus, I have to leave, I'm going to get up to $511 a day, right? Capped at 511 times 10 days, that's $5,110. If my family member or someone gets sick and I have to care for them, I get the reduced amount at the $200 per day. Okay?
That's right.
That's right.
Whew, that's a lot. Okay.
But remember, Andy, the public policy here, again, is to keep people out of crushing their emergency rooms and getting the determination first and then coming back to you with a doctor's note or whatever it's going to be. Go home, self-quarantined, and have some reliance as an employee that there's going to be some money coming in, and then have some reliance as an employer that you're going to get reimbursed in quick order for it.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense.
Okay, emergency paid sick leave. We're still talking a little bit about that. Brooke, you want to go ahead?
So for those employers that currently have generous paid sick leave or are located in areas, whether there be states, local governments, municipalities, that provide paid sick leave, how does that work? How does that interplay with this emergency paid sick leave?
Right.
And it's in addition to. So this doesn't take the place of your PTO. You cannot require your PTO policy to run concurrent to extend this. This emergency paid sick leave is in addition to your existing obligations. So be sure that you're checking with your local, your state government, that you're abiding by their sick leave laws as well.
And the only other thing I would say to that, Andy and Brooke, is that the law does talk about certain exemptions for healthcare providers. So if you're in the business of doing healthcare, it might be a little different. Stay tuned. We expect to have further guidance. This law specifically called for the Department of Labor to issue specific rules and guidance around the specificities of this law by next week. So it's, like you said, it's the 20th of March today. We expect some guidance to come out by the first half of next week. Undoubtedly, they will talk more about healthcare providers and their specific exemptions under this law and whatnot. Obviously, again, the public policy goal is we need to protect healthcare providers, probably first and foremost in terms of if they get sick or not. But we also don't want them on the sidelines too long. So I think that's when you see the guidance, I think that might be addressed. And just remember too, this law was passed in record time. I mean, it really was. I mean, having spent 8 years in the Congress, I can have appreciation for what they did. I also understand that the faster you pass a law, bipartisan or not, I appreciate that it was bipartisan here, the more holes there are going to be, frankly, in the law. And that's where leaders like Axiom, leaders like Apex Benefits come in to fill the breach, to make sure we're interpreting and giving best advice for clients, but understanding that the agencies are going to have to fill in those holes right now. And I'm very pleased to see that the Congress put in a specific deadline for the agencies to react to and fill in those gaps by, and that's why I can confidently say by next week.
Because it was 7 days.
Law. Yeah, we're going to see it next week. So
okay,
that's a good thing. Brooke, you want to talk about the family medical leave expansion?
Sure. So it's a mouthful. So I think what I'm going to call it is the emergency FML leave. And I think the big things to my fellow FMLA nerds out there, the big difference is that the service requirement is different. So for typical FML, we know it's 1 year, 1,250 hours. For this law, employees who have only been employed for at least 30 days maybe are entitled to emergency FML, which is a bit of a shift for us.
Okay.
And that as far as covered employers, we're seeing private employers with fewer than 500. And we're also seeing with employers for less than 50, they're going to be shielded from civil FML damages.
Okay, so we put a liability protection in there. And then there's also the discussion about waiver. If you're under 50 and there's a hardship, does that allow for a small business to apply for a waiver for some of those?
It does.
Okay.
It does. So they would apply to the DOL for that waiver.
Okay.
And the details on that, where can I go? Where can people go to look at that waiver or find out more about what would qualify as a waiver?
I think that'll be coming from the Department of Labor as well in short order.
We don't have those details quite yet.
Okay, thank you, Brooke. Why don't you continue on and walk us through the expansion of EFMLA?
Okay. So the first 10 days are unpaid. Of course, the employee and per your policies can choose to utilize other PTO benefits. However, after that 10 days, they're eligible for an amount not less than 2/3 of their regular rate of pay. And that is capped at $200 per day or $10,000 in the aggregate.
So I'm seeing that it tracks, right? These are whether it's sick leave or FMLA, it makes sense. I could see where Congress said, hey, look, sick leave is the near term. Mm-hmm. It's the shorter term. We'll start with that first. If it bleeds over into a longer term emergency FMLA, so be it, the first 10 days of that will be unpaid, and then the emergency FMLA will pick up for another 10 weeks of paid. But the rates of pay are generally the same. The aggregates are generally the same?
That's right. That's right. It's just important to note that it's 2/3. So there's not that qualifier like there is in paid leave.
Okay, say that one more time for our audience.
So for the Paid Emergency Family Medical Leave Act, the amount is not less than 2/3 of their regular rate of pay versus the emergency paid sick leave, which if it's their own illness, it's 100%. And if it's for the care of another or school outages, it goes back to that 2/3.
2/3. Okay.
So what I'm hearing right now is what you need to be thinking about, employers, with your payroll company is we really need to be tracking two different PTO type of requests, right? One is the emergency sick leave, which is the short-term piece, which is up to 2 weeks, right? And then the other one is the emergency family leave, which is the more extended period type of thing.
Right.
I'm really glad you pointed that out because tracking those are going to be essential.
Tracking is going to be essential, and we can't forget this is not supplanting or usurping other sick time and family leave time that might be available. This is in addition to, right, Brooke? So you'll have to track your regular sick leave and FMLA as well. So now, how to get paid for all this? I mean, that's really the concern that I can see that employers have. I mean, it's one thing to get a tax credit, and that's how this is set up, and that assumes that the business has revenue coming in. So let's take that scenario first. The way I see this law set up is what's going to happen, again, starting April 2nd, when you can start taking this emergency, when employees can start taking this emergency leave, is that instead of paying your payroll taxes, your federal payroll taxes to the federal government and then reporting those quarterly, you're going to switch, and you're going to switch immediately, and on their and out of paychecks, you're going to switch that money to cover any emergency paid sick leave or any emergency family medical leave that might be out there. And then you're going to report that switch when you do your quarterly reporting. I think that's the best and most succinctly way I could say it.
Right.
It's going to be confusing. I would expect IRS forms to come out that are going to make this a lot easier in theory. So instead of paying the federal government, you're going to be paying your workers to the extent that you need to cover these emergency leave mandates.
Okay, so if what I hear is right, starting April 2nd, we need to start tracking who is taking the sick leave and the family leave. Then when we pay it out on the upcoming payroll after April 2nd, instead of paying your FICA tax will be reduced in real time to cover this. And then at the end of the quarter, we'll be reporting what we claimed as a credit during that quarter. Okay?
Again, you can expect more guidance here from the Department of Labor and IRS going forward, but that is how it looks to be how the law was set up.
Perfect.
Yep. Brooke, do you have anything to add there?
No, I think you did a great job.
So let's get to some questions, Andy. We had some more here that we thought...
my question, and I'm sure everyone's question, is how are we going to pay for this? How are we going to manage it real time with cash flow now?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about that and how that looks, and then of course that example doesn't work well for the business that has been shut down by government fiat right now, or like a lot of our restaurants where you can't gather. Luckily, there's carryout. But what do you do when there's no revenue coming in? I mean, that is what I'm expecting that Congress will deal with, evaluate, and help out with in this phase 3.
Okay.
Again, that's CARES Act that the Senate has just come out with, I believe, last night, if not this morning. I'm still going through the law. You thought 47 pages was tough. This one's 247 pages. So, and really for
47, huh?
247.
You're right.
Yeah. So, and really still for federal legislation, that's kind of a baby bill. I mean, I've been forced to read 1,000-page bills before. So, you look for the CARES Act, look for cash infusion directly to your employees, quick, short-term, very low or no interest loans from SBA, how that's going to work, and maybe and hopefully, I haven't seen this yet, cash infusions for businesses. But also, what I did see so far is that there's going to be tax deferrals. So your corporate taxes that you may owe, other taxes you may owe, I think that's being taken off the plate for right now as well.
Wow, including 941 delayed payments possibly as well.
Yeah, that's all. I believe all that's in there. So it's literally being digested as we speak. So just understand, keep coming back to this place, and we will keep updating our clients on all these things. The other way you can curtail costs without having to lay off or terminate individuals, which is the last thing that we want to do. And clearly the public policy in these laws is to keep people on the payroll and working. Look at your employee benefits. There's a lot of room to do a lot of things in terms of adding value and cutting costs, whether it be reference-based reimbursement, reviewing the plan, the RX plan and the formulary, determining if you should be self-funded if you're not right now, taking on a little bit more of the risk, which would give you a lot more flexibility in terms of ERISA and driving down some of your costs. Consider the right sizing the balance of of employee contributions versus your contributions as an employer. Is it right for the economy that we're in? Review compensation strategies. Do those kinds of things. And I think Brooke brought up a good point earlier about force majeure with your vendors. I mean, that's another thing. We are in a force majeure situation. So you know that clause in your vendor contracts that no one ever reads about acts of God and the environment and such. This is one of them. See what you can do to be negotiating with those that you contract with.
And the last piece that I would add for possible is we've heard a lot, or you will in the coming days, is the SBA loans, the disaster recovery SBA loans. We'll be pushing out content on that, but really the experts in that has been your Chamber of Commerce. So your local Chamber of Commerce has really been forefront on that and delivering that. If anyone needs that information, we'd be more than happy to share that. But everything that you've told me is you really need experts. You need trusted advisors to get you through this. I can't, like I said, possibly read 47 pages, let alone 247 pages. It's going to be quite a burden, and I'm sure no one wants to do that. So in these times, we'll be delivering this content as soon as my team of experts, my partners, my sisters, can get through these bills, and stay tuned for more information on that. I want to say the next stuff that we'll be delivering, if you have questions, I'm sure you have questions. The easiest way to put this together would be to email us at info@axiomhrs.com, info@axiomhrs.com. I will put together all of your questions that you have, and then we'll have another sit down or maybe a remote question and answer to cover those questions in the coming weeks on that. The other thing is, as I said, this content's unbelievable for a firm like ours. So I'm asking you, if you need to stay updated, is to check out Apex's website, and that's apexbg.com. That's apexbg.com. They have a whole team of marketers and researchers that are putting this content up as soon as it's delivered in real time, type of thing. So I just want to say thank you so much for putting this together so quickly. And we'll be in touch, like I said, in the coming days. It may not be in person, it may be more via remote webcam type of things. It's not going to be the prettiest content there is, but we just want to get it into your hands and really put a face and a life raft to this, and just reach out. If it's just to talk and vent, we're here for that as well. So thank you.
Absolutely, Andy. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.